My name is Amanda Gigler. I am the Director of Partnerships and Communications at Mama Cash. Mama Cash is a feminist grant maker that supports women, girls, and trans people's rights organizing all over the world. I'm so happy to be here on this amazing panel with these 4 women who I think are going to bring some fierce, bold brilliance to this conversation about women and girls' rights and the rule of law. So before we dive into the content, I just wanted to ask quickly of those of you who are here, how many of you work at NGOs or in the nonprofit sector? Great, thank you. Anybody here a student? Huh? Yeah. Double job. Any of you working for UN agencies or for governments? Okay, great, thanks. Just to get an idea of who's in this room, who will be a part of this conversation. So our idea with this session is to make it a bit informal, have a bit of a conversation amongst ourselves. The 5 of us have been in contact over the past few weeks, and we really want to make this a moment and an experience that will be enriching for everyone. So I'll just start with some quick intros, bios, and then I'll ask some questions of each of the panelists just to get us going. And then we will continue to have a conversation amongst ourselves and also invite you to participate, whether it's with questions or comments. And please, this is aimed to be an open space for dialogue, for thought-provoking questions and comments, but also respectful. So we'll dive right into it. A discussion of the rule of law and women and girls' rights can bring many topics to mind, whether that's implementation, access, participation, accountability, and I think we're going to dive into all of this and more with the 4 panelists. I want to introduce first Ms. Irum Ahsan, who's a senior counsel at the Asian Development Bank, where she leads the law and policy reform work. She mainly works in Asia, but her gender work recently has been in Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Tajikistan. We also have with us Ms. Barbara Arnwine, who's the president and founder of the Transformative Justice Coalition based in the US. And she brings an intersectional approach to policy and justice system reform, democracy, and rule of law.
Thank you.
We also have Dr. Aurora de Dios. She's the executive director of the Women and Girls Institute at Miriam College in the Philippines. She's also part of the convener of the Women's Peace Collective, which is working with Muslim women in conflict areas. And finally, last but certainly not least, we have Dr. Haifa Al-Hababi, who's the assistant professor for architecture and design at the Prince Sultan University. She's also on the Saudi Council of Engineers and was the first woman to register to run for elected office in Saudi Arabia in 2015. The first year when women were allowed to vote and run. Thank you. Thank you all so much for being here. So we're going to dive right in. And I want to start with a question for you, Irum. So you're working with both formal institutions and also with social norms, so behavior change, attitudes. Can you tell us a bit more about how you came to work on both of these issues to address gender-based inequalities, gender-based violence against women and girls, and other issues?
Yeah, thank you. So when I decided to work for the rights of women in these 3 countries, which are very similar in terms of geographic location, very close by, in terms of religion that is practiced in these 3 countries, which is Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Tajikistan. They're all Muslim countries, and they rank very high on gender inequality index, so there are a lot of commonalities. And one commonality that these countries enjoy is that it's not just about lack of laws or institutions for women. It's a mix of social and cultural norms and lack of awareness about laws. So there are a lot of laws and a lot of women organizations and ministries and institutes in these countries, but it's the mindset. So unless and until you work both with the formal sector as well as in the informal sector, you cannot bring a holistic change. So what I tried to do and planned to do was that I work, because women in these countries surprisingly know quite a lot about their rights. They know quite a lot about existence of laws, because there are so many NGOs working in these countries and who educate these women. The problem lies with men or the service providers who treat them differently. So we thought, let's work with the service. So the project is called Legal Literacy for Women, but I'm working with men. because that's where the problem starts in these countries. So the service providers, meaning the magistrates, the judges, the police, the lawyers, medical legal officers, and then the informal jirgas, panchayats, which is the informal justice institutes. A lot of those operate in our countries, and maximum decisions about women are taken in these informal judicial offices rather than, because women do not come to the formal courts because of it takes a lot of time for them to reach there, it's not accessible, they would not know what to do, so they would need a male chaperone. So most of the cases that are brought in the formal courts are basically brought by men on behalf of women. And then men decide what case should we bring in. So if I'm raped, my brother will ask me to, instead of identifying him, why don't you identify him, because he is the one who's sharing land with me. So let's save our land. So fictitious cases that are made by men. So when we spoke with judges, they said, yeah, most of the rape cases are fake. What they were not trying, they were not successful in explaining is that they're not fake rape cases, but the cases that they have made around that rape is fake. So in the formal justice system, very few women come. Informal justice system, which is led by respectables of the society. So if it doesn't need any degree, I can be a 5th grader or not seen face of the school, but I can be a judge because I'm a respectable man or elder of that society. So I head that informal court, and then the woman will not be even brought before me. All the men will gather and they'll tell me that, me being a male jirga head, that, oh, this girl committed fornication with another person and it was a consensual sex and they're stoned to death. They should be stoned to death. And I said, sure, why not do it? So this is the jirga leaders that we deal. So formal, informal institutes together with cultural and social norms, it's not just about the formal legal judicial system. Unless and until you deal with the entire system, no positive change can be brought, Amanda. So that's why I decided to work both with judicial systems and with the social and cultural systems in which this informal justice system prevails in these countries.
Yeah, thanks, Irum. Something that we were talking about amongst all of us just before the session was about the perceptions, especially in the West, where, and a lot of the narrative, especially in English, which right now is our common language for this session, it's dominated by the West. And an assumption, a prejudice about non-Western countries that that's where most of the violence takes place. And this is particularly in Western Europe and the US, a narrative around violence and discrimination against women and girls in Muslim countries. So I wanted to actually bring Haifa into the conversation to talk a little bit about your work. You've highlighted your work in the Saudi Council of Engineers. You are a successful woman engineer, architect in the design field. Could you tell us a little bit about your experience, how you've come into this council, the place where you are now, and some of the experiences that we were talking about before the session?
Thank you. Actually, everyone knows that Saudi Arabia now has been changing, and this, let's say, new vision 2030 helps us a lot as a female, actually. So we have this vision 2030, but we have something called a National Transformation Program, which is 2020. Actually, I would like to emphasize on this National Transformation Program 2020 because it's the first written thing that we can refer to, not only as a female, as like a citizen as well. This transformation, it's written by every ministry in Saudi Arabia, and all of them, they said that we're going to do 1, 2, 3 to reach the 2030 vision. So in this national transformation, the woman mentioned 8 times, and that, which is like really changed a lot of, let's say, women rights in Saudi Arabia. So this is just brief about to answer your question, which is my role in the Saudi Council of Engineering. So because of this National Transformation Program, they opened for the first time to be on the board member and as a female in the Saudi Council of Engineering. So I've been elected from actually male, not a female, because most of the females actually they are not even a member of the Saudi Council of Engineering. Then I've now working with them for a year, and we changed a lot actually. And as I mentioned earlier, our problem in Saudi Arabia, it's not about discrimination, it's about segregation, because we are segregated, and the men who are in the rule of giving the laws, or even saying what's going to happen, they don't really know what's going on the female side. So when I be a member and in the board, I start to mention what's as a female we have our problems. One of the problems, for example, it was that there's no lectures for females, it's only male. We don't have scholarships from the Saudi Council of Engineering for females. So they thought before that we are not in need for such a thing, because they don't know, no one's complained, and when someone, if you don't complain, no one knows that there is a problem. So we start to bring issues like that, and also we don't have, thank God, we don't have a difference between wages between male and a female, but our problem that we don't have an architecture or interior designers in the government sectors, because all the colleges, it's been there for only maybe 10 years, so it's a new practice in Saudi Arabia, and we are working on that to change this thing to enter the female and the government sectors as an architecture and designers. So hopefully for a year now we are doing very well. We've took a lot of our rights, and hoping that we're going to have more things, inshallah.
Great, thank you. And we'll get back to everyone as we go through. We're going to go through, hear everyone's voice first. And I wanted to turn to you, Barbara.
Yes.
Related, but in a different context, you're working in the US at the intersection of race, gender, we talked about disability rights, about LGBTQ rights. Can you tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing, and also in relation to some of the things that have been mentioned already when we're talking about the assumptions that people may make, the different experiences that people have at the intersection of their identities?
Well, for those of us, thank you so much for the question, and it's quite an honor to be on this panel with these amazing advocates. In the United States right now, everything has changed because of our new administration and because of the GOP-led Congress. And so all of the fights that we've been engaged in have actually deepened in their severity and in their problems. So we are living in an era right now where we are dealing with what I call a hyper-racial climate. And that means that contrary to the racial denial that you hear from our government about we're in a post-racial era, actually we're in a hyper-racial era where we're seeing hate crimes against people of color, against LGBT people, against Jewish people, has really exploded in our country. And the incidence level has really increased. For women of color, this is a very dangerous time. And the hyper-racial atmosphere is mirrored by what I call a hyper-patriarchal atmosphere. And it seems that authoritarianism and patriarchy go hand in hand. And what we're dealing with, therefore, for women is that if you're an immigrant woman, your reproductive rights is under threat because people are worried about your having children, about your children, multiplying and threatening what people see as a, quote, white nation. So what we actually have seen is an increase in deportations and other problems. What I like to do is to address these issues, in our law. I like to address these issues differently than the legal structure the U.S. has set up. The legal structure of the U.S. is very binary. And for example, there's a saying that in the United States, there's a saying that all the women are white and all the blacks are men. And that's because of the conceptualization that people have. So the law is structured in a way that race and gender are seen as separate paths. And the combined realities and the particularizations, if you're an Asian woman, if you're a Native American woman, if you're an African American woman, are not really recognized. And it causes severe problems in the courts, and even more severe problems in public policy. So what I try to do is to promote what I call an intersectional lens, an intersectional theme and approach to the law, and to really focus the law that is not the separate realities, it's not just, quote, a combined realities, but when these intersections meet, they actually create new and special causes and special realities for people. So a good example is you've been hearing about all the police killings of blacks in the United States. 40% of every person who is black who is shot and killed when unarmed by a police officer is a person who is black and a person with a disability. 40%. Yet the disability community in the United States has not stepped up to say that this is a problem that it should embrace. The African American community has to learn to focus on the fact that it's not just race, that it's also disability, and we have to learn more about disability rights. These are some of our realities. Transgendered women, who are women of color in particular, have been facing a lot of hate and a lot of deaths in our country, and that's really problematic, and yet there's almost no focus on it in a public policy way. So when I look at the law, I have to, because I teach the law. I teach race, I teach comparative constitutional law, and I teach international human rights law. In addition to my advocacy work, which is where my major work is done. But when I teach it, I have to really focus on reimagining justice, reimagining the structure of the law so that it is much more comprehensive, it's much more current, it's not formalistic, all about formal equality, but also about substantive equality. So a lot of that effort is where I do my work. And I see from my sisters here on this panel the interconnections, because no society and no reality that we live in is separate from each other. They all have an interconnection. For example, when the Muslim ban happened in our nation, when President Trump said that people would be banned from the 6 nations, and I was advocating against this Muslim ban, saying it was illegal, that it was religious discrimination, that it was also a form of hidden racial discrimination. When I was doing that, people in my country actually said to me, "You are betraying your mission as a racial justice advocate." And I had to say to them, do you realize what these countries, that Sudan is an African nation? You're saying that I should be only advocating for Africans and African descendants. Do you realize that it's an African nation? You know where these countries are located. And people were embarrassed because they didn't. And they had assumed the wrong thing. And then my point was, even if you were right, the fight for humanity, the fight for human justice requires an elevated form of transcendent thinking when it comes to justice.
Thanks, Barbara. We'll get, again, back into all of these topics in a bit more detail, but I wanted to also turn to Aurora. Yes. And I think there's an interesting connection here. There's a direct connection to a lot of the work that you're doing, particularly with the Women's Peace Coalition, perhaps, and working with Muslim women in conflict areas. Could you tell us a little bit about that in relation to the topic of this panel and what people have said so far?
Well, I'd just like to preface my, my input today by saying that I do appreciate the kind of difficulties that you're undergoing, because in so many ways our presidents are
the bromance, right?
a new breed of rulers that are perhaps trying to introduce a new narrative about how democracy should be, how the rule of law should be, and how women should be brought back to where they came from, which is to say, without rights and without any voice in policy making. So my advocacy for women's rights started quite early when I was a student in the anti-Vietnam War campaign in the Philippines, and I hadn't even started my career when martial law was declared in the Philippines, and so I had spent many years trying to struggle to restore our democracy. And for some years, and 40 years of stability and women's gains in the international arena, with all those conferences, with the reconceptualization of human rights as women's rights, and the institutionalization of the rule of law, which is to say that the rule of law is no law at all if it does not include the rights of women. Mm-hmm. So this past 30 years is really significant, because we have seen laws addressing violence against women, addressing discrimination, the literacy and maternal mortality, issues that are very close to the hearts of women. We are now at a point where we have come to be a little bit complacent and say that all these gains are going to be there forever. But we just realized in the last 2 years alone that this can really be reversed in a way that will really challenge the kinds of strategies, the kinds of directions that we have always adopted and embraced. So apart from, I think we should think in terms of the dynamics of change. That change happens either way, the positive side or the negative side. And in my country, it has turned backward, it has retrogressed, and here we are dealing not only with the reversal of women's rights, but also the intensification of the divides, the national divides, including the divide between majority of Christian Filipinos and the 10% Muslim women that we have. We've worked around restoring peace, not only especially in the conflict areas in the South. And we have seen that in these, really poverty-stricken areas where literacy is so low, maternity mortality is so high, that it's the women that's holding on, are really, making the communities work. So in our campaign, in the Women's Peace Collective, we have decided that we will work with women and to train them, to develop their capacities for leadership and empowerment, and to train them to become peace mediators in the conflict areas. And these conflicts have been there for like centuries. And we've seen in the last month that violent extremism has made its presence on top of what we're already dealing with. So we are not, we're disturbed about this, but we are determined to see that with years of advocacy, training, and empowerment of Muslim women, and in partnership with the Christian sectors, Christian women, that we will ultimately have, a chance and opportunity to restore the kind of peace that we all want. Aware that the kind of challenges that we're now facing are layers of discrimination, neglect, and the emergence of something that we have not and confronted before, which is violent extremism. So these are the kinds of problems that we're trying to deal with now. And I must say that we can never take things for granted, because very easily the democratic institutions that we have established for many years can be eroded, can be undermined, and can be negated in just so many months and so many years, as we have seen in the United States. I really resonate with you when you say about the difficult and very layered complications.
Yes.
Thank you. I want to hold on to this topic of resilience, of alliances, but I just wanted to ask, there was someone who came in right before the panel started who wanted to say something before she has to fly to Kuwait, I think. So please, you wanted to share something briefly before we continue. Thank you.
I think we need to give her that.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak about the very important international, regional.
Thank you.
Hold on.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak about a very important international, regional, and national issue. We talk about the achievements and difficulties, and we have missed a category in our societies, namely the category of persons with disabilities, especially women and children in wars and disasters, regarding Article 6 from UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. We need to realize we live in a world with increasing We live in a world with increasing conflicts, especially in the Middle East, which creates issues and problems for people with disabilities and live in those conflict areas. These conflicts also increase injuries without having the proper care of facilities to take care of disabled people probably. We need to work on spreading the message of love and peace to the world and reduce the number of conflicts and show compassion to others. We need more international and local organizations to study and research how to better help people with disabilities in conflict areas. We need to realize that more conflicts lead to more disabilities, and the people with disabilities are the most likely to suffer the most in conflicts, and the refugee and charity organizations need to be more aware of the needs of people with disabilities. This article also 11 from UN Convention. We also need to educate more people, especially females with disabilities, on violence prevention and other such programs in these conflict zones. Finally, I would like to thank you again for giving me this opportunity to speak to you about this issue, and I hope that we can find solutions to these issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for bringing this up and bringing this issue into the conversation. It's really important, and I hope we can discuss disability rights alongside all of the other issues around gender justice that we're talking about. So thank you and safe travels. So I wanted to also go back to a bit of what you were saying, Aurora, around finding alliances, partnerships, strategic opportunities for whether they're women advocates or people who are working on gender justice issues, who might also be men or people of other genders. And I wanted actually to turn to you, Irum, because a lot of the work that you're doing in the campaigns that you're working on, you mentioned to me that you're engaging with men and boys, that they're the key advocates. You mentioned that a bit in your introduction. Could you talk a bit more about that? And I have this specific question in mind about how you find the balance between engaging with men and boys on gender justice issues, and also making sure that there's enough space for women and girls to exercise their rights and to take up the space that is their right to take up.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for asking that question, actually. So, as I said, that The title of my project and the way I wrote the project was Legal Literacy for Women, and of course it was to make women's life better, make them feel empowered, make them feel secure. But at the same time, when I started to design the project, I thought that how can that happen? That can happen if I try to do my bit in changing the mindset of these societies. And the mindset in all of these three countries is patriarchal and feudal. And from the very beginning, when a boy is born in a family, the mother starts telling him that you are the head of this family. This is the sister. You need to take care because she's your honor. So, you know, automatically from the very beginning, he's been brought up with that mindset that this is it, I'm it. And you know, she is someone who needs my protection, who's my honor, who has to follow me because I'm the provider and she's the follower. That's how they are brought up. So unless and until you work with young boys and mothers of those boys, to please do not tell them. And I always say that coming from one of these countries, so I'm not somebody who's been brought or imported from outside to work in these countries. I'm part of one of these countries. I think my very, very straightforward thinking is that the day men will stop considering us their honor, all of these problems will sort out. I always say, just consider us human beings. We are just like you. So don't think that we are your honor, because the minute you make us your honor, you kill us for your honor, you rape us for your honor, you do whatever you want to do with us for your honor, because now we are your property, we are your honor. And that's the problem. And we have to tell this to men and boys that they are not your honor, they do not need your protection, they need your support. They need your love, and that's what I'm trying to work with men and boys. So we met this dynamic woman in Afghanistan who's a judge. She said that her fate was written as a child bride. At the age of 9, she was supposed to marry this man into another tribe. Don't know how her father actually took a stance and he said no to that marriage. Of course, they were ostracized, they had to leave the village and everything. He agreed to do that. He did not give her into marriage and educated her, and now she's a judge. So I thought this is the story that needs to be highlighted. So men needs to know this hero man. And this hero man is going to educate other men, and that in turn will change the lives of women and give them that space that you're talking about. So really in these societies, to be able to provide space to women, you really have to work with men. And as Haifa also said, and I did not think about that before, she said that it's not about discrimination, it's also about segregation. That is also true in our societies. They don't mingle with each other. My father would not even know what my needs are or what I am, because you know, they are so separately leading their lives. There's a segregation, there is no understanding of each other. And that's why they are frustrated societies as well, and that's why a lot of violence occurs in these societies. So it's important to work with men, young boys in this space to find that peace and to find that the empowerment and the rights for women. And that's what I thought would be useful. So I'm trying to highlight, there's a media campaign in my project, which is a positive media campaign, because you look at YouTube, Google, legal empowerment, domestic violence, violence against women, and you see these horrific videos of acid throwing, of burying alive, of slaughtering women, of, name a form of violence, and you'll see these videos out there. So if I'm an oppressed woman and I look at these videos, I will not feel empowered. I will not feel more aware about my issues. I will go back in my room and hide myself there, right? What I need to see is these hero stories where a brother took a stance for a sister, or a father stood up, or a woman thought that, enough is enough, let's go out and fight for myself, and she got something. So I'm trying to find these female hero stories and male hero stories and make short videos, songs, puppet shows, picture books, comic books out of these. I'm also creating a female character in Pakistan, a Punjabi character. A Punjabi woman is supposed to be, all decked up, and I'm a Punjabi woman as well, so just think, we love to dress up and make up. And a Punjabi woman who's saying these things. So we plan to put this woman, nicely clad, not like me, in a dupatta, so everybody can respect her as well, and put her on a truck, on a rickshaw, on a cycle, on a banner, everywhere, and she's giving messages, these legal, social messages. So like a character, I hope the character becomes, popular enough and people start talking about what she's saying. Oh, she's saying this now. So we are trying to come up with this concept in Afghanistan in the name of Khor Bibi. Afghanistan character is already running. Pakistan we are coming up. So these small things, but mainly trying to attack the mindset. And with my project, I will not be able to change the mindset of all of these 3 countries. But as I said, right now I'm training judges. Out of 2,000 judges, if I can manage to convert 5 or 10, that's my success.
Yes.
And that's my target. I'm not aiming for the world to be changed through this project, but my little bit would be this. And that's how I'm trying to find the space for women.
Great, thank you, Irum. Aurora also wanted to say something,
Yeah,
and then we'll go.
I just wanted to reinforce that the importance of really making alliances and educating men about how they should, and to reject the kind of masculinity that's imposed on them, that conditions them to see themselves as more superior than women, and that then gives rise to the exploitation and subordination and oppression of women. And I think it's very much related. The thing that I've observed in democratic transitions going back to repressive regimes, is that when democratic institutions and the rule of law is undermined, you will see a reversal of the male privilege and misogynism and sexism re-emerging.
Yes.
I don't know. I don't have a scientific data to say that regression in democratic institutions also gives rise to misogynism, which I saw in the U.S. with your dear president and my dear president, who just so liberally condemn women, calls them sluts, whores, and ordering our troops to rape women in his own hand. If the troops rape women, can you imagine this kind of language that hasn't been there for the last 40 years? And so suddenly, all these males now join in the chorus of sexism and misogynistic attacks against women. So I think that we probably didn't have a good job, did a good job of educating not men in general. And I think that in this campaign we should really have strategic alliances with men, imams, for instance, church leaders, media people, judges in particular, who make all these horrible decisions about rape cases and violence against women, which we still see is very prevalent in all of our society. So I think we have to make that a particular and strategic direction of all of our advocacies on women and men, and young boys in particular, which start, embracing these myths about their superiority at a younger age. Yes.
And I wanted to say, a saying that in the United States, we have also been advocating for black men to stand up for black women. Yeah. And to have what we call a black male feminist mindset. And so actually this, on July the 20th, I believe, will be the first kind of national training for black men on being black women, being feminists.
Good for you.
Yes. And I think the same thing is needed for white supremacy. That whites in America need to take more leadership over dismantling white structural racism and racial hierarchy. And that the real movement gap in the United States is not the gap between the indigenous people and the Latino people and the Asian American and black advocates. It's the gap between too few white advocates who will stand up and speak against white supremacy. And so that's why the mayor of New Orleans became such a major hero when he started taking down the monuments in the city that were celebrating white supremacy and people who had been active in the Confederate War trying to keep blacks in slavery. So, you know, it's important that we recognize that that dynamic is just as important as, you know, creating the feminism the dynamic, but also the bromance between my president, Putin, and Marcos. It's so ugly.
Duterte now.
Right. Oh yes, it's so ugly.
Duterte.
Duterte. Yes. It's thank you. Duterte is so ugly that you know, it's very, you know, threatening to us when we look at it, and because they have the same kind of mindset.
Yeah.
And it's the same kind of authoritarianism and anti-democracy. And so, you know, we're fighting voter suppression and all kinds of other issues in our country that should not be on the agenda because of that. And so I do agree with you that we got a lot of international alignments, including, as the sister was saying from Kuwait, the alignment around peace.
Yeah. Thank you. I wanted to just bring Haifa into the, once more to the conversation before we also open up for some comments and questions from everyone else. I'm curious, I'm hearing that we're hearing some talk now about alliances, about kind of ways for women to be, women and men and other people to be addressing injustice issues. You were talking before we started the panel about your experience and kind of a very successful experience, if I can call it that. Could you talk a little bit about that and maybe about what you have been, how you found support in your networks and how you have been able, and maybe explain a little bit about what your experience has been, what you were telling us before the panel started.
I think all of us were just like, you know, going around the same thing, that there is a law, but our problem is not with the law, it's with law implementation. And this is the biggest problem in Saudi Arabia, actually, that we have the law there, but no one's implementing the law because no one's reacting against people who are like not implementing the law. So I don't know, but maybe my success was because I did not take it from a feminist point of view. Maybe when I talk about profession. I did not, even when I entered to the municipality election, I've run as an architect who gonna like add to the community, who in need, which is planning, urban plan, and all this thing. I've never talked as a female. I only use my profession. This is, I think that's why I've been even more accepted by my people. Because when you talk as a profession, you're not gonna target the feelings, you know, you're gonna target the mind only. So you're gonna talk mind to mind. I think the problem that we are, when we talk as a female, and we said we are female, we need female rights, you tickle this button that, you know, something with a feeling, but when you talk as a profession, as an architect, what's the difference between me and you as an architect? It's our work. So if we deal with it that way, I think we're gonna solve a lot of problems. I'm talking about like in Saudi Arabia, because I've do this twice now, and thank God that I'm succeed. I'm not like maybe they talk about different issue, violence and, you know, rape, and thank God that we don't have that much in Saudi Arabia, or I don't know about it. I don't deal with this side, but I deal more with women in engineering, professional practices. So that's what I'm trying to let people understand. Is why should I talk on behalf of women, not on behalf of our practice? So this is the thing that, you know, maybe I'm saying different than the people in Saudi Arabia.
Okay, thanks. Just add one point. Sure. I think that's another very good strategic way of dealing with this issue, is that we just stop dividing them between men and women. If they're professionals, they're professionals. In Pakistan, when I was working with police, they said lady police, call a lady police. Call, you know, that, this. I said, why are you calling her lady police? She's a police officer.
Yeah.
So he said, oh, but you know, we provide them separate bathrooms. And I said, just because she has a separate bathroom, she does not need to be put in that category of being different. She is a bloody police officer, just call her a police officer. Then they started making them wear different clothes. The woman said, I want to wear the trouser and the shirt because if I wear long shalwar and kameez, it's not very practical for me to run in that or fight in that, but they don't let me. There were no regulations that say women have to wear different clothes, but just to put them in a different box. So once you're in a profession, you're a professional. A judge is a judge. It's not a male judge, but when I speak with judges, they also say, our lady judges. So I've started to dislike the term lady, you know. Why? We don't say, we normally say men, we don't say gentlemen. And so they call us lady, put us on that pedestal and separate us, you know. So we need to, and they don't do this intentionally.
Yeah.
So I always feel that they are actually men do a lot of things because of unconscious biases and those unconscious training at the back of their mind. And we just need to use good strategic planning to deal with these issues, the everyday issues.
And I think that shows the difference in cultures and difference in countries, because and difference in racial realities. And probably when you have a society that has so many races as we do in the US, and we have racial hierarchy built into it, that is different. For example, I am a lawyer, and I am very, very much a lawyer, right? I'm a lawyer's lawyer. But the reality is that oftentimes when people realize I'm a lawyer, the first response is a pushback.
Yeah.
It's almost like you're lying. They don't want to believe it. There's a great video, if you haven't seen it, that's on the internet right now of the black woman attorney who is the state's prosecutor for the state of Florida.
Oh, Florida, I'm in Florida.
For the state of Florida. And it's a video of her being pulled over by the police who have racially profiled her because she's black. That's the first thing they saw. They didn't see attorney. They saw a black woman in a nice car, and they pulled her over, and the exchange is fascinating because they say something to her about, oh, we don't understand why you got the kind of tag you got. She got that kind of tag because she's a governmental employee, right? And she said something about, well, you know, this is my car, this is the way it operates. And she says, by the way, I'm the state attorney for the state of Florida. And their reaction is so fascinating. So I'm saying it works in certain places, in certain countries, but in our country where you got the layered racial stereotypes, the embedded racial stereotypes, where black and female does not equal black and accomplished, does not equal attorney. I mean, there's so many other barriers that we got to break down. And if I just presented myself purely as a lawyer, it wouldn't work. It would not create the kind of barrier breaking, the kind of stereotype chain breaking. It wouldn't open the doors that are necessary. So I just wanted to make that distinction because our cultures are different, and our political realities and our racial realities are different.
Thank you for bringing that up. I want to open up to some questions and comments from you all. And so there's a person right here with a comment. Yeah.
You have the mic.
The mic is right there. Yeah. Thank you for helping with the mic.
Thank you for everything you have said, and I'm not saying that because I'm a man. My country has arguably over-focused its development policy on the development of women.
Singapore.
Today, the women are more educated than the men. There are more women in the universities than the men. The women are smarter than the men. All the top students are women. The women have more money than the men, less debt, more assets,
That's what I was thinking.
more likely to achieve their financial goals and address their financial concerns. So as a country, it has worked very well because arguably our focus on development of women has led to my country being called the economic miracle in modern times. There's no magic. Women are less corrupt, they're more hardworking, less fraud, less...
They are 50% of the population, sir. It stops there. No economic development is possible unless you include the 50%.
Now's my question.
Yeah.
We have come to a stage where we have some unintended problems. More than half the women are not getting married. More than half the men are marrying foreign women. Our birth rate is the second lowest in the world. So, do you have any experience on these issues that I just mentioned? You have some advice for us? How do we, I mean, it's great, women development, economic development, but these issues we are grappling with today. Thank you.
Thank you. And can I just clarify, the problem being the birth rate, or are you saying that people not getting married is a problem for society? And is that a problem, or is that
the
lower birth rate? Perhaps a lower birth rate and slower population growth. All right.
So men are making their choices, women are making their choices. So it's really a matter of choice.
Let's take we'll take a few questions and then we can address all of them. I think this is really interesting. Over here, the woman please in the front row, and then we have the woman in the white shawl and the woman behind her. Maybe just pass the mic down. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I thank you very much. Wonderful panel. I am fascinated by your legal literacy for men.
Thank you.
Whenever we organize conferences in the past, we organize conferences for women, and it's as if we're preaching to the converted. Exactly. But what I don't understand is what is the content of your legal literacy course, and also what is the content of the training? Is it a structured training that you give to men and all these stakeholders who so badly need to be conscientized about the needs of women, sensitized and conscientized, because they act as if they don't even understand, or we know that they don't want to know, or probably they know and they don't know. How do we get them to change their minds? I know that we have tried working through traditional leaders. We try to win them over to get them to understand our point before we meet the people that they lead. But then I'm very, very keen to know about the content of this.
So I was talking about more, should I answer? I was more talking about big picture, but the content is the 2 or 3 kinds of trainings. Main training is gender sensitization, but we provide that training by doing the needs assessment of each sector that we are working. So when we provided the gender sensitization training to police, we first met with the police of the entire province to know what their biases are or what this thinking pattern is. Currently, for instance, when we are working with the judges, we did the needs assessment and we realized that these judges think that affirmative action provision in the Constitution is not needed, because if women are out there to compete, they should just compete. There should not be extra layer of protection for them. Till we made them realize, but you know what, after doing 8 hours job with you side by side in this court, they go back home, then they cook for you, they feed their children, and before coming to court, they do their day job, extra day job at home. After going back, they do their extra job. So they are not equal to you. They are much more up there in professional responsibilities, and hence they need more. That's the affirmative action. And you need to make them realize that. So for their training, it's a gender sensitization training, which is where we are trying to tell them to use certain narrative when they use certain language when they deal with women. They don't realize that this is a woman and I need to speak with her a little differently, not as crudely as I was talking to that thug who came here. She's a rape victim, or she's here to plead custody. So these sensitization, how to behave in the court, how to behave with their female colleagues, how to behave with their female staff. So they said, one judge said, I don't want a female reader, a clerk. And I said, why? He said, because you know what? Lawyers come and speak in her ear very close to her mouth, asking about their cases. I said, sir, you need to change that system of whispering in ear. Being a female lawyer, I will not like to whisper in male clerk's ear as well. Rather than changing the gender of your clerk, you put a system together. You know, so these small things. So this is the sensitization training we are putting together. But in this sensitization, there's a cultural behavioral training. Then there is Islamic training, that Quran and Prophet say something else than what you understand them to say. So exactly the Arabic text of Quran, which is so empowering for women, which is beautiful, which puts women on the highest pedestal. So to teach them on that if they have any misconceptions about Islam as a religion, then we need to clear those conceptions. Third element is culture. There are so many illegal cultural customs which they have started to believe they are legal and Islamic. So that these are just cultural practices. You have to not to condone them as a judge. And then international standards. When we ask them, do you use international standards while deciding these cases? You ratified CEDAW and everything. They said, no, but we just deal with domestic. They don't realize that those international standards are very much part of their law and they need to. So different elements in one gender sensitization training. Then we deal with religious scholars, give them text from Quran and Prophet saying and say that use this text in your sermons. So for instance, in Afghanistan, it's a polo-like game called Bishkesh. When it starts with a sermon of a religious scholar. So it's an all male game, all men of the society gather, but a holy person gives a sermon before they even start the sport. Imagine if that sermon is talking about what God says in Quran about women, you know, how women are to be respected and how women are equal, how women are superior if not equal. So we are working with them, giving them context from Quran and Sunnah, and so we've identified some mosques who are progressive, educated and want to work with us. Of course, we cannot work with everyone. It's a very sensitive area. Me being Muslim, even I can't access. But yes, we have identified a few mosques and few religious female scholars who I'm using to talk to male scholars, you know. So working with them. With youth, we use different kind of training techniques, more picture books and stories. So main content is gender sensitization training, but different tools, techniques, contents for different kinds of audience.
Thank you. Thanks. Can we take the next two comments right here? Yeah, or questions. Go ahead.
I just had a comment to our colleague from Singapore, just because, I don't know where he went, but just I think with the birth rate issue, I don't think it's a question of women's empowerment, but enabling families to make choices after a child is born to make it possible to continue on a path of a career. Because in Germany, that's also an issue, and they've put financial compensation for families to be able to take the time off, both mothers and fathers. So that's one solution to that issue.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for all the insights. I'm from Senegal, and I have two questions and one contribution. So one of the questions is for our sister from Saudi Arabia. How do you see in the 10 coming years in the link of the Saudi vision for 2030? How do you see the advancement of women's rights in Saudi Arabia? The second question is about informal justice in India. I'm wondering, aren't women sitting in the informal courts? Because from what I've heard, it's as if it's uniquely filled by men. So that's my question. And my contribution is about the way you explain how social norms were lingering on people's rights. And it's so true, because I'm working, I'm trained as a lawyer, but I'm working in a communication platform in order to end female genital cutting. And regarding that, we all know that it's a social norm. But people, as you just nicely put it, they are hiding behind the religion, trying to get some religion explanation. But for me, we really have to make the link between social norm and man responsibility and woman responsibility. Last week, I was in a countryside in Senegal talking to communities, and one of the men, he's what we call in French a griot, which is a traditional communicator, because we didn't have written history. People were transmitting history by voices, by stories, like a storyteller. That guy told me, listen, my mother-in-law is a traditional woman who cuts girls. I know that the law forbids female genital cutting since 1999. I told my mother-in-law, listen, I have my 3 girls. You will not cut them. If you touch one of my girls, I will get rid of your daughter as a wife. You have sons. If you want to go cut them, girls, you can do it. This is just to show you that when men take somehow responsibility, they can be champions of women's and girls' rights. And I want to address this as also a woman's responsibility. Because somehow we women are the one who raise our kids.
Sure.
If we just question the way we are raising our own kids, no matter where you are, in America, in Netherlands, maybe in Netherlands it's not true, but in most of the countries, we have traditional assignment for women, for girls. Nowadays, maybe in Western countries, men cooks, but usually in most of our countries, women are in the kitchen. And I think we have to take our own responsibilities as women in order to advance also women's and girls' rights. That was my contribution.
Questions? There are 2 women in the back who are raising their hands
Yes.
as well. Yeah.
Should I answer the question?
Later on. We'll wait for the 2 questions.
Hello.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much. I just want to start by saying thank you. And you're all amazing and beautiful and just goddesses, I can tell. And I'm from America, obviously, by my accent. And I just wanted to agree with what my sister in purple said earlier. I'm sorry, I don't know what your name is.
It's Barbara Arnwine.
Barbara?
Yes.
Okay, cool. And my name is Chris. It's that dismantling racism is definitely white people's work, but it's everybody's work too. We all need to do it together because we're all in this together. Men, women, feminism, we all need to not be ashamed of saying that we are feminists. I think all people, all of us, all one, and we forget that. Like, we're all here together and it's so cool. Like, I feel this is a big family reunion, you know? Like, really, it's cool. It's cool to be in the Netherlands. And in a city that really appreciates peace.
Yes.
Like, that's what it's about. It's about peace and love and respect. And conscientization, like, that's a tricky word to say. I like consciousness raising. That's what it's about. It's like, and what else? So I'm from the US, and I just wanted to make a couple points because people think that, things are good there, but I mean, like, if you live there, you know that things are not good there, and things aren't good anywhere, everywhere. And we got a lot of work to do, a lot of hard work to do. I want to make a couple of quick points about some of the worst things going on. Is that 1 in 3 women in the US have been raped or a victim of sexual assault and violence. So that's a big number. And a number of men have too. I don't know that stat, but 1 in 3 is an easy one for me to remember. And that we need to dismantle systemic racism and address it and remove the guns, I think, because we should not be shooting people in the street, and that the police officers that are killing black men weekly, all the time, like every week, in my hometown this week while I was here in Olympia, Washington. I'm from Florida, so I know about racism because I'm from the South. I'm from south of the South. Okay, so it's dark. It's heavy. It's heavy. We need to like bring some light and love. So that's my message, and just thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Did the woman next to you want to say something?
Yes, very
please.
quickly. Yes, my name is Chichi. I'm originally Nigerian, as you can also tell from my accent. And I just want to, but I've lived here for quite some time. I just want to offer a little suggestion from my experience working in the corporate world. I worked with one of the big multinationals for almost 2 decades. And I saw that the fortunes of the female employees were transformed over time as the company embraced a global diversity and inclusion standard.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, this was adopted at the group, and all the operating companies under the group had to implement it.
May I ask which group are you talking about?
Shell.
Shell.
Yes.
Shell.
Yeah, not only Shell.
Microsoft, a lot of companies.
Yes.
The
The Shell
diversity
group.
governance.
Yeah.
Yes, I worked for Shell Nigeria for Royal Dutch Shell.
Oh my God.
Yes, as odd as it may sound, but they did adopt a global diversity and inclusion standard in the early 2000s, and it had to be implemented in all the countries across the Shell group. And the practical implementation meant that issues like treatment of minorities, sexual orientation, and minorities included gender, because it was recognized that the women constituted a minority group within the group. So policies were put in place. I don't have the opportunity to go into details, but policies were put in place to address some of the systemic barriers that held back the women. I was chairperson of the Shell Nigeria Women's Network for about 5 years, and by the time I was leaving Nigeria to come and work here, we had a woman on the board. It never happened in almost 40 years of Shell in Nigeria. And you know, the policies were adopted to progressively grow the talent pipeline to include women who could aspire to leadership levels. So I think that the big multinationals have a role to play if they can be engaged as stakeholders. They can do these things at the corporate level, and eventually it affects the society. You know, there are so many initiatives now, things like encouraging young women at high school age to take up the science subjects. You know, it's difficult to become the leaders in an engineering company if you're a lawyer like me. It's difficult to be apex leaders. You can become functional leaders, if you see what I mean. So it is possible. It takes a lot of courage and sacrifice, you know, from the women. You are the group who are affected. And, you know, we had to form a network. We had to sensitize the leadership. We had to engage with them. We had to make input using our own time and resources to let them see how it feels for us to be in an organization that was not gender friendly at the time. But over time, like I said, things have changed. At least speaking for myself, in Nigeria, the head of country, the head of legal in Nigeria is a woman. There are female directors, there are female general managers. The corporate structure has changed over time to recognize that the women are a valuable part of the workforce. So it can be done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much. And we have just, we're actually over time. I had said that we would go 15 minutes over, so it's almost 12:45. So I actually just wanted to ask if the panelists wanted to have say one or 2 minutes, 1 minute each as a final wrap up, so that you can all go to lunch. Yeah, so did you want to start?
Yeah, well, I just wanted to say that thank you all for your inputs. We learned a lot from what you were sharing with us. First of all, I think that change really has to be addressed at several levels, one of which is the macro and institutional level. Without the policies that are progressive, that are meant to change things, the campaign for equality will never happen. But at the same time, I do agree with those of you who said that it has to occur at the level of the family as well, at the level of the institutions, the schools, and particularly at the political level. I say this because the core of change really comes from, the most important institution that we have, which is the political and governance systems that we all have. If that is reversed, if that becomes really anti-people and anti-women, then we have a big trouble trying to change things. So I think a lot of you have pointed out that change has to happen not only in terms of policies, but in terms of norms, in terms of attitudes, in terms of behavior, and that takes a lot of time. And so I think all of these elements put together really can create the momentum for the kind of justice and gender equality system that we want. But I would like to just point out that in times of crisis, I'd like to underline the role and the strength of women in trying to change things. I'd like to show you a bit of the pictures that are now happening in the Philippines in the face of the autocratic rule that we are facing, that women have come up. And in fact, the first political prisoner that was put to jail by the Duterte government is a senator who dared to challenge the extrajudicial killing. And for that, she got slut-shamed. They threatened the sex video against her, which we all stood against. And what we did was to have this website that says, every woman. And if you show that fake sex video, we will all go to Congress and say, I am the one in that sex video, and I will testify. Mm-hmm. And before we knew it, there were 1 million women who signed up. Mm-hmm. And so that sex video has not been shown at all. So I'd just like to show you her face. Shall we? Oh, this is the kind of things that are happening in the Philippines. The students come out in the streets, and every month there is a candlelit protest in the Philippines. These are all students, men and women, in 3 universities, protesting the extrajudicial killing, which now counts to about 9,000. And this is the woman I was telling you about. She's Laila de Lima. She's a bright and brilliant lawyer that has been put to jail because she is the lone voice against EJK. So she's our symbol of resistance. And there's a movement to free her, and the resolution by the European Union to free her from jail. And these are women asserting and using our historical milestones to demonstrate the women have made so many gains and they cannot allow a retrogression of their rights. And one movement that we've just formed is Baigani, which means women and warrior. It's a solidarity movement of feminists against EJK. And these are families of over 120,000 families left behind by those who were killed in the war against drug. So we provide assistance, therapy, and they too are part of the campaign to end this murderous drug campaign. So thank you for just sharing with you that.
Thank you so much. Thank you. We just have the final words. So there was a question actually for you, so maybe you would want to answer it with your last minute. Thank you.
Actually, I would like to say two things. First of all, I would like to answer your question. We, as a new generation in Saudi Arabia, we are very optimistic with 2030, and we are seeing the changes happening. And if anyone of you follows Saudi Arabia news, you can see how the changes are really dramatic and really quick. That even we used I work in a private university. We used to be faster than the government, but nowadays the governments are faster than us. We cannot even cope because they work just like crazy. So this is to answer your question. The second thing I really would like to emphasize on the role of men. Actually, I've been supported by my father and my husband, and who let me continue my profession as an architect is my father, not my mother. My mother was like refusing to send me abroad and to study because we don't have it at in my age, we don't have universities that teach architecture at that time in Saudi Arabia. So I believe that, as I said before, that if we work together without separating or without saying female or male, it's all going to work much better and much easier, and we're not going to tackle these sensitive issues, and we're going to go through it, hopefully.
Thank you. Thanks. Irum, and
I just want to say, I think we need to change how we speak, how we think, how we judge people, and that is sensitization. I used to laugh on so many wife jokes, female jokes, my whole life. I was feminist from the beginning. I still used to laugh because these are just jokes. Now I've become so sensitive, and people started calling me cynical. Fine if they call me cynical. I have stopped laughing on these jokes. I have stopped appreciating my friends making these jokes on themselves, that, oh, wife joke. And so these are small things we need to change up there to consciously change our own mindsets. And it goes for both men and women. So let's start thinking differently. Let's stop saying that my job is cooking, cleaning, washing, and your job is working outside. And once we start saying it, we'll start believing it. So that's what it is all about.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. I just wanted to say that, just one word, I really want us, as we talk about men and women, just never to forget our girls. You know, our girls are, under such attack about their images, who they are. There's a new report that just came out in the U.S. Showing that African American girls as early as 5 years of age are viewed as women. Yes. And it talks about how they're robbed of their innocence and are criminalized, viewed as adults, adultified, as it said, at such an early age. So part of our mission, I always see as a feminist woman, is to reach out to the girls, to embrace them, to affirm them, to strengthen them. Lastly, we all like to think that change is linear, that it goes in a straight line, and that's never true, at least in the US, that our change has always been zigzag. You make advances, then you get a backlash. You make advances, another backlash. It's always the question is the severity of the backlash. So we're in the post-Obama era where everybody is so angry because, Obama did it. He was black and our nation's just crazy about race. But the ultimate lesson for all of us, I think, is that change has to be structural. It has to be broad, widespread, broad for everyone. We can't look at individual women's accomplishment and think that really represents what's happening for the whole group. And to make structural change, legal change that's real, requires so much work, and it definitely requires the changing of the norms, and strengthening our democracy, our democratic institutions is critical. And the one word of hope that I just want to leave with you is that after the bitterness of the Trump election, the Clinton defeat, the real good word in the United States is that women are running for office like never before. Yeah. So we're going to see, and progressive women, so we're going to see some good changes. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I think that, Barbara, you've summed up the point of this panel entirely, so thank you for that. I'm going to leave the final word with your wisdom. So
you've been wonderful. Thank you for moderating us. You have been so awesome.
Thanks. And we never got to hear about her awesome work.
Right, exactly.
So
she does amazing.
Talk all over the tea.
Over lunch, perhaps. But so thank you all for being here. I think it's time lunch should probably be ready. And enjoy the rest of the day and the rest of the forum.
Thank you.
Thanks.